Now, Yvette Cooper today became the fourth Labour MP to declare her candidacy for the party leadership. She did so during a visit to the Midlands constituency of North Warwickshire, where Labour failed to win last week, even though it was the Conservatives' most marginal seat. Labour's leadership candidates will have to work out why the party couldn't even reach its easiest target at the election. So our political editor, Gary Gibbon, went to North Warwickshire to find out why it, like so many others, swung not to Labour, but more safely into Tory hands.
Middle England. North Warwickshire thought the months of siege by politicians were over, but today another one turned up.
So I'm standing to be the new leader of the Labour Party.
Labour leadership contender Yvette Cooper chose to launch her campaign here, because this was meant to be the easiest seat for Labour to win in the whole country, and they failed. This week, its Conservative MP posed with David Cameron, and the Labour challenger was left outside Parliament, reflecting on a defeat he didn't see coming.
Certainly, our results from the doorstep suggested that we were doing well and would win, right up to the last day.
Here's how the parties lined up here after the 2010 general election. Labour and the Tories neck and neck. And this is what we think happened after that, according to conversations with the various campaign teams. UKIP obviously had a phenomenal surge in this constituency, draining away support from Labour and the Tories. But closer to the election, the Tories seem to have been much better at squeezing back support than Labour was. The Lib Dems, never a strong party here, fell down at the beginning of the last Parliament, most of that support going to Labour, but then truly, virtually disappeared closer to the election, most of that support going over to the Tories. Sprinkle on a few Labour abstainers staying at home on election day, maybe even some Labour supporters going over to the Tory tally, and you see how a knife-edge constituency virtually everybody thought was lost for the Tories now has a 3,000 majority.
Oh look, there's one of my William Cash bus ads.
William Cash, son of the Tory MP Bill Cash, was the UKIP candidate.
What we saw happening without any shadow of doubt is that the Tory vote hardened, and
they squeezed back votes from you.
Definitely,
thousands of
definitely. And I think that.
But Labour, did they squeeze any back?
No, I don't think they did. I was getting about 50 to 60% in this sort of what I would describe as fairly typical working class, what would have been die-hard Labour.
In streets like these, the Tories pounded out relentlessly tested messages on jobs, on the SNP linking up with Labour, through phone calls, Facebook, email and carefully tailored direct mail letters based on detailed knowledge of swing voters in this marginal seat.
Loads of posts every day.
Were they letters that would, dear,
yes,
using your name?
Yes, they were very personal.
Seemed to know all about you a bit?
Yes, yes they did. They did indeed.
What do you think about that? Did it change your mind at all?
No, no it didn't.
Did it spook you at all, the fact they seem to know what you like?
It did my son, because he's autistic. He was like, how do they know all this about me?
For months, a political conveyor belt has passed through Sertec, the car parts manufacturer here. On the shop floor, you sense that in the last days of this campaign, Tories pulled in non-voters, ex-Lib Dem voters, as well as ex-UKIP supporters.
It was UKIP at the very start, most of it all the way through, if I'm being perfectly honest. But
and then at the end?
At the end, Conservatives, I think, yeah, in the end.
What brought you back to the Conservatives?
I just thought, I just thought about it. Like, I thought, the amount of jobs that they have actually created. I mean, thinking about it, a lot in my social group, a lot of my friends now, they're all employed and stuff. I mean, under Labour, I don't know. I just don't think there was as many jobs around when Labour was in power, like. So that was the reason, yeah.
And do you consider yourself a Conservative?
Not really. No. I don't think they're a party of the people, so to speak. But
you're a person and you voted for them.
Yeah, I know. I just think some of the policies I agree with more than the others.
Last election I voted for the Liberal Democrats.
And this time?
Conservatives.
And what made you switch?
Just the Conservative stance on tax, really.
Did you worry about the Scottish nationalists running things with Ed Miliband? Tories talked a lot about that.
Yeah, I thought of that, but then I thought perhaps they might focus more on Scotland and not so much give us, what England needs, perhaps. I didn't know.
And so that helped you make up your mind to vote Tory?
Yeah.
Having not actually voted since 1997.
Exactly, yeah.
Whatever they were saying worked on you.
Yeah, it did.
The Labour candidate here insists there were hardly any direct switches from Labour to Tory. The Conservative campaign manager reckons he's wrong. You converted a knife-edge seat into a 3,000 majority. If you were guessing how many of the people in that majority now are people who voted Labour in 2010?
I would think a good proportion of the majority.
2/3?
Yeah, absolutely, has come from.
You saw it on the day when you were
Absolutely.
knocking up
Yes.
voters?
Yeah, absolutely. We saw it on the doorstep. Yeah, we were somewhat confused.
Not so much
about the
shy
polls.
Tories as self-loathing, maybe. Were they comfortable?
Oh, absolutely. You know,
Why didn't they ever do
seen-
it before then? Why didn't they tell the pollsters?
Well, it's very interesting. It's very interesting.
I'm not necessarily convinced that a lot of Labour voters suddenly jumped ship and decided they were blue rather than red.
But they might
I
have
just
stayed at
didn't
home.
take that. I think quite a few of them did.
You found
stay
that
at
knocking
home.
on the door
Yeah,
that
it
day.
was difficult to get people to go out to vote, and people were saying, well, yeah, not this time. And
there were people who'd said that they would.
oh, yeah, people who'd said over the previous couple of years that we will be voting Labour.
The man in the Jag who stole Labour's voters here thinks the Labour leadership contest could decide whether Labour ever wins back the lost support.
Do you think areas like this could be for Labour what Scotland has become for Labour? A heartland they completely lose?
Well, I think that if they elect the wrong leader, someone like the business secretary, Chakamana, I honestly think he would struggle to identify.
But who's the one who could do you the most damage?
I would have thought probably Burnham would be the one most likely to be representative of someone who could perhaps claw back some working class votes in places like Bedworth.
Whether UKIP's own leadership is in good enough nick to hold on to its support is a moot point tonight. Polling mistakes make it harder to crunch the numbers and work out exactly what happened last week. We do know Labour went backwards in many other critical Conservative-held marginals, not just here. Scottish seats are even harder to turn around. The electoral mountain Labour must climb is now a whole lot tougher than it was. Gary Gibbon, Channel 4 News, North Warwickshire.